I am going to recording on the meeting so that we've got it for reference afterwards, and then we can work through. So from an agenda perspective tonight, first of all, thank you for joining. On the agenda, there's an update from me with regards to kind of our purpose, communication and changes to membership that are going to be happening. We are then going to have a development monitoring group update from Ian, and then we've got fishing requested to be put onto the agenda, and then we'll move into some kind of general discussion and Q&A based on what members and residents are feeling and want to have a discussion about. Okay. So first and foremost, we'll move into the chair's update. So obviously I took over as chair in, sorry, I'm trying to work two computers at the minute and still got people joining. So I took over as chair in March after Paul decided that it was time to stand down as chair, and with some of the kind of things that came up on the resident survey and the direction that residents wanted BWCRA to move in, he felt it was time to let someone else kind of have a turn at being chair. So he stood down, I took over, and obviously we're a couple of months down the line now. I kind of spent the first few weeks and months looking at, okay, what did that resident survey tell us around what people were thinking with regards to BWCRA, and where were people's kind of heads. And there were some things that came out from the survey that jumped out at me. And those were mainly a bit of a lack of clarity on what BWCRA does. Bit of a lack of clarity on what it stands for. People feeling that they weren't very clear on what the membership fees were for, and they felt that communications weren't clear or transparent. So those are the things that I kind of focused on at the start, and what you'll see from what we've done and what we are doing, and some of the changes which you'll see come out in the next kind of week or so, is some changes. So first and foremost, I wanted to really drive more information on purpose. So what are we here for? And I look back at the kind of original constitution, had some conversations with some of the other committee members, and these were the three real things that really jumped out as being what was BWCRA there for. And it was about building our community, using our combined voice to influence, and driving accountability on our development. And effectively coming together and using our combined force power in order to kind of drive those things. And that's the sort of information that you're going to see a lot more at the forefront of kind of communications coming out from us, of our website, and what we're trying to deal with. What you will see going into hopefully next week after, our website will be updated, and you'll see something with a much fresher look and feel to it, a lot more visual. It's going to make it easier to digest, and what we're trying to do is move away from the really heavily worded pages with a lot of content on there to more visual pages, which will hopefully try to break down some of the points that are more complicated in nature, which we're trying to ensure that actually people understand and can get the information out of. So if I just quickly give you a view of kind of what the website will move to and what it will look like, this is the new website. Sorry, my computers are going a bit slow. There we go. So what you'll see on here is, as I said, is a lot more visual. We've tried to break it down a bit better, try to make it a little bit clearer around kind of what we're trying to do, what our purpose is, how you can engage with us, what we're trying to do, and actually try to break down some of the issues and some of the things that people talk about to make it a bit easier to digest. So obviously we'll be looking at keeping this information up to date, and what you will hopefully see is in the next week or two, that will go live. It's still the same web address, so when you go to the BWCRA site, you'll just be met with the new look and feel. What we're also going to be looking to do, and most of you that are members will have already had kind of one of these out in June, is issue a regular newsletter to give that view as to what we're doing and try and give you that kind of transparency around kind of what's being worked on at the moment and what's happening. So we're still working on kind of what the cadence of that newsletter is and how often we're going to send it out. But the first one went out in June, gave a bit of an update with regards to kind of where we had come from in the last couple of months since the AGM, discussed a couple of things on there around an update with regards to, I think, phishing at the time, and an update with regards to the development monitoring group. The next thing to talk about, so we met earlier in June as an executive committee and tried to look at the some of the barriers that had come up with regards to membership. And one of the things that kept coming up as a barrier was the cost and understanding what that money went into. So it was agreed as part of the committee meeting that we held in June that we're going to reduce the cost for the 2022 membership and reduce that down to £8 in order to try and entice some more people. We're also going to look to introduce a prize draw. So there'll be a monthly prize draw of £25. And each month there will be a different winner that money will go to. The money from membership will be used for limited purposes going forward. So that will be mainly for running costs for BWCRA. So being able to make sure that we've got communication channels for you, the insurances that are needed for the association, other running costs, and the prize fund for the membership, for that membership. And what we're effectively looking at, apologies, 1 second. I just clicked something with the wrong mouse. Sorry, 1 moment. There we go. Hopefully people will see. There we go. There we go. And money from membership will be used for more limited purposes. So effectively where we're getting to is any projects that are going to need funding will need to raise money through kind of donations, grants and other sources, rather than looking at receiving money from the membership fee. And what we'll be looking to do is, as membership grows, we will use it for what the cost of running the organisation is. So as membership grows, we will look to reduce the cost of membership and then look at obviously other ways to fund projects and the like. So that was very much kind of the update that I had from a chair perspective. I don't know if anyone's got any questions at this point. If not, we'll move on to development monitoring group update with Ian. Give it a second. If anyone has any questions, more than happy for you to come off mute and shout up. Hi, Mark.
Thanks, Daryl. I was just wondering what the current membership was. Do you have that to hand, or is that going to be later on?
Yeah, so the current membership that we have at the moment is about 95 residences. So obviously we look at membership from the perspective of how many households there are. We have not actively asked people to renew at the moment because we have had some difficulty getting access to the BWCRA bank account with the changeover from the last treasurer to the new treasurer. That is still outstanding at the moment, and hopefully that should be kind of closing out very shortly, and he'll get access to that. And then what we'll be doing is going out to all the members who will have lapsed in the last few months and kind of remind them about, one, the new fees, and look for the renewals. And we'll also then be looking at kind of posting some more information on the Facebook page in order to try and obviously get new members to join based on kind of the new structure of the fees and things like that.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else before we move on? Okay, doesn't look like it. So I'll move on to hand over to Ian so that he can give his update.
Okay, well, the Development Monitoring Group meets on a regular basis and looks at sort of two sorts of issues. One of they trying to ensure that when the management company, if you like, comes over to the residents, that everything that the developers should have done or will be doing is covered, so that there's no risks involved. We're also looking at that in the long term. In the sort of short term, we're looking at the day-to-day issues with REMAS and the developers. I think we all know that the TP1 documentation we had at the time of purchase, I think, was generally based on the assumption, shall we say, that the development was finished and then handed over. But obviously, as part of the planning permission, bits and pieces, because it's such a large development, are being handed over on a phased basis. There are some anomalies in that in terms of two particular issues. One is the number of or the timing when individual residents or individual properties are actually registered with REMAS as the work goes on. I mean, I think there's something like 1,150 properties being completed and occupied, but currently there are only about 550 that are actually registered with REMAS. So some people are paying at the moment and some are not. We're trying to get to the bottom of the issue as to why these properties haven't been registered with REMAS. And I think it's to do with arguments amongst the consortium as to whether certain areas have been finished in accordance with planning or not. Under the Section 106 agreement, that's something we're trying to sort of get to the bottom of. Now, the current issues, I think, with REMAS, it's a bit of a slow process getting resolved. And the first thing that we're awaiting confirmation of the areas of their development which they actually now maintain. It's not all the areas, you see, because some of the areas are still incomplete and still under the control of the consortium itself. Now, generally speaking, these aren't being maintained by the consortium the way they should be. And that's an issue that's been raised with the developers' agents. Other issues with REMAS itself are the late issue of the accounts for the year 2020. Now, the group has commented on some of the issues on the draft accounts, stating certain things. Should they be there? Have they been allocated properly? I understand that's an ongoing discussion internally within REMAS at the moment, and we should get a response to those queries. Now, in terms of the late issue of these accounts, we would have expected those accounts to be issued probably late in 2021, but that hasn't been the case. And we're trying to make sure that this certainly doesn't happen in the future for the accounts for 2021, which should be due round about now, but that's something that's sort of ongoing. Now, in terms of the way that REMAS charge for the services, is that every year they provide a budget. Now, that budget is a sort of, if you like, payment on account. Now, the issue with that budget is that REMAS have to assess what areas they think will be completed and handed over at any particular time during the year of that budget. Now, if certain areas aren't and there's an underspend, that'll be reviewed in the accounts for that year and any credits put back. So it's trying to get through that these budgets are not a finite thing. It is a budget, and the final costs take some time to be actually worked out and put into the actual accounts themselves. So it's not a finite thing. There are still discussions to have even when the accounts are issued. But it's important that these budgets are actually paid on time, because that's what we've all signed up to do. Other issues, I think, with REMAS are sort of you know, mainly to do with the quality of the work they're doing. They've now got a new estate manager, and I know that she's been round the estate. She's taken photographs, she's spoken to landscape people, and I think two particular areas of concern, I think we're on phase 2 in, I think, Fort Pentra, and also what they call the waterside gardens, where the grass was getting a bit ridiculously overgrown, but I think that's now being dealt with. So we have regular meetings with Remus, and these issues and any sort of short-term residence issues are raised with them. Now, we also communicate with the developers' agents, so a firm of surveyors called Whitehead, and there's been a lot of recent correspondence with them regarding, you know, the late sort of completion of some of the public open space areas, and also the lack of movement on the the adoption of the highways, if you like, Ford Millennium and also Ford Dockyard, which is still incomplete. Now, current situation is that the estate roads themselves can't be adopted until Ford Millennium's adopted. Now, we have assurances from them that this any remedial works to Ford Millennium will be carried out in September. This apparently is at the request of the council, who want this done after the school holidays, because any roadworks or whatever would affect the sort of summer trade, if you like, to the island. Now, we are trying to arrange a further meeting with the agents to try and get more firm dates about the rest of the adoptions. They have stated, I mean, 40 Dockhouse in not a very good state. It's overgrown on the verges. They've still to put the final surfacing and what they call the speed tables at the junctions. Now, they've told us that now that the works to the cliff face, and people might have noticed there was some pinning going on just to put final stabilisation on that cliff face. And the works are now out to tender, and they are again saying this should be carried out in September or October, which will get rid of that side of it. We've also had discussion and correspondence with the planning department as to whether all the items that the planners wanted have actually been installed. Now, there are some missing trees, for instance. Some of the quality is not too good. And I understand that there's an enforcement team at the planning department actually working on this, and they will report back soon as to what actions they'll require the consortium to do. Also, we sort of deal on a sort of day-to-day basis with residents' concerns, immediate concerns, and these include things like the weeds in the pavement, if you like. The consortium's been told about it, and they will come round and de-weed, as they say, imminently. What imminently means, I'm not sure, but it's certainly something we'll keep our eye on. There were issues with fly tipping down Fordy Dockyard. There was also an issue with missing streetlights in E. Rodfa across in Arno Quay, where the council are aware of it, and E. Rodfa itself has been adopted by the council, and they're constantly apparently onto the consortium getting that, to get that light put up, because that's what they've agreed to do. Other issues include queries about budgets for maintenance around one particular apartment block in Fort Penryn. We're waiting on a response as to find out what grounds and what landscaping around that block are in fact being maintained, because there's not a lot around there, and the sort of feeling is that the budget might be too high to actually justify that. The other issue that came up, I think, was cars that were being driven through the district centre. That was raised, and I understand I've seen 2 concrete blocks have been put there to stop any passage of cars through that area, but still to hear what their permanent arrangements will be to ensure that doesn't happen in future. Those are just some of the issues that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. But it's important that when people correspond, if you like, complaining about certain things, it'd be useful if there were photographs, you know, or descriptions or whatever, as to where the issues are, because it saves people from BWCRA having to go around with a camera and check it out and then send it off. It makes life a bit easier. And that's really the extent of our stuff. We're on the case and we won't let go, as it were. So if anybody's got any queries or concerns, if they can let us know, and we'll pursue it.
Thanks, Ian. So I can see that Mark has raised his hand for a question. So Mark.
Thanks, Daryl. Thanks, Ian. Thanks for all your work on this. I just wanted to let people know I met alongside with Nick Hodges the other week. Yes. We met the enforcement team and walked them round the estate and taught them, and they went through the elements that were being dealt with bit by bit. I think they're pretty exasperated with the developers and with Whitehead, the contractor in particular, in terms of
absolutely they are
where they are.
Who went round with you? Was it Mark?
So Mark Stevens.
Yes, he's been very useful, very helpful, and very supportive.
To be fair, he's very good. I think the point that I think is worth noting is that they're at the point where they are starting to think about how they make sure that these things happen now. So the last time they got to that point, there was enforcement action that was taken. So I think what we would like to do is to press them to continue with that vein of thinking. And just briefly as well, on the bit where the cars were driving through, so I asked them to put the concrete bollards that are there. We've also asked them to block the Asda route as well, because that's another route that's being used. The plan eventually is to have planters there that would stop any cars driving through. So that's the answer to that question.
But the issue also with that is that there should be trees and planters there, and they haven't appeared yet. We're constantly told that we're done the next planting season, but it never is. So I know that Mark's aware of that. And it's been to see what sanctions they can actually put on the developers, because I think the only way I think you can get the developers to act quickly is if you actually affect the finances, as it were. So
absolutely.
A bit like the when the district centre, which should have been completed before phase 1 was completed. The enforcement action is they forbid the sale of properties on phase 2 and phase 3 until that was completed. Now, I've never seen a building go up so fast in my life when that happened. So it's something the enforcement team, I hope, would consider doing as to the sale of future properties on East Quay.
I think that's where the pressure needs to go. But thank you for your work, Ian.
I enjoy it. Okay, I can't hear things.
Hello. Oh, go on.
Shall I speak or?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you, Charlotte.
Okay, thank you so much. Apologies, this is the first time that I've come to this meeting. I'm not a member, but I will be after tonight. I just had some questions really, and I wondered if now was the right time to ask them. And apologies if you've covered off these questions in previous meetings that I've not attended, but would it be okay to ask those questions now?
Yeah, please ask.
So firstly, just to say thank you to everyone who's part of the Resident Association. It sounds like you've been doing a great job over the last couple of years. I moved in about a year ago and knew essentially I was moving to a building site, and I was okay with that. A year down the line, I live at Hailty Draw. So I think that, and I live here with my children, and the things that are sort of concerning me, and I'm just wondering if you've got any feedback on them, are things like the rubbish. There's an awful lot of glass. I've got a 4-year-old who rides his bike, who likes to do Spider-Man moves, things like that. And there seems to be an awful lot of dog poop as well. We walked over to Good Sheds the other day, which is what kind of spurred me on to come to this meeting, and the rubbish was quite overwhelming. And I don't know whether it's like I don't know whether it's a local council issue. I don't know whether it's I don't think it would probably be a consortium issue. I think it may be like a cultural issue around here. I don't know. I don't know what we can do. It just seems to be very bad, and there seems to be a lot of destruction. I noticed that some of the fences have come down. Like outside our house the other week, we had like a van drive over some grass. So, you know, the dog poop is obviously an issue. I'm just wondering what practically we can do to address the issues long term. I mean, recently I had a chap go into my car. I think it's all being managed by the police now. But he'd been going into people's cars at like 4 a.m, and luckily one of my neighbors picked up on the CCTV. But I just feel really sad about our area. It's quite dirty in places, and I just want to know like what I could do or what we can do collectively to help address some of the issues.
Yeah, well, I think street cleaning will become the responsibility of the council, but it's still currently the responsibility of the consortium. Now, in terms of rubbish, I mean, we find on bin collection day, it's horrendous. The stuff that gets tipped out, you know, even round where the bin truck is, you know, they just chuck it in, and if the stuff falls out, they just leave it. So that's probably something we need to deal with the council. In terms of sort of general rubbish, I know along 40 Dockyhow, you know, where those you know, the steps are the right of way up to Clive Road or Cliff Road, whatever it is, you tend to find shopping trolleys, all
really
that
bad.
kind of stuff, beer cans, you name it.
There was a sofa there the other week with
Sorry?
there was a
sofa.
sofa with kitchen cabinets as well.
Yeah. But it's something, you know, we can raise with the council. I'm not quite sure how we stop sort of interlopers dumping stuff there, but it's I know there are organised litter picks, but we shouldn't have to do that, if you know what I mean. You know, the area should be tidy. Dog poo's another thing. It's illegal anyway. I know that there's a property at the end of our street where they let the dog out in the front garden and it's covered in dog poo, you know. But I think it's trying to educate people to say you can't do this. You know, it's unacceptable. And on the pavements anyway, it's illegal to do it. It's difficult to know how to actually deal with that. So it's something that we'll keep an eye on and try and find suitable ways of trying to make it, you know, better. You know what I mean? The other issue is I'm not quite sure if people are fully aware of what bits of property they own or not. Because again, along 40 Dockyhow, you know, the properties that face there, you've got the pavement and the back of pavement, and then you've got a 2-foot strip and then a garden wall. Now, I'm sure people think that it's good, the garden wall and what's inside is their property. But I think if they actually look on the land registry, I think they'll find that their property or their responsibility stretches out to the back of the pavement. Because I know I've seen rubbish dumped there, hoping somebody will pick it up, overgrown plants and everything. So that's something that perhaps in the communication with residents we can actually deal with and try and make them a little more wary or responsible really for the areas that they need to upkeep. But it is, you know, I agree that it's not a good, you know, driving along 40 Dockyhow is not a particularly good advertisement for the estate.
I mean, I'm just throwing it out there as ideas really. When it gets taken over by Remus, they're the management company, will they be responsible for like things like keeping the areas tidy, the fly tipping, the state of the gardens, things like that? Well,
anything that's not people's private property, yes, they'll be responsible for that. And if it requires them to come around more often to pick up rubbish and whatever, that we can arrange for them to do that, but only when they're responsible for those areas. But
Do we
obviously,
have a timeline for when they're taking over responsibility?
that's another thing we're trying to look at, because they obviously, when the consortium consider that a particular area is finished, they will approach Remus and say, we're going to hand this over to you. And Remus will either say, no, we don't think it's complete because the trees haven't been planted or something. But once they take it over, then, you know, we can make them or ensure that they actually tidy and clear up every now and again to make sure it's kept really tidy. But in terms of timescale, that's what we're trying to establish.
So what are you saying, that there's like an interim problem and a long-term solution, or?
Yes, it's an interim problem because the consortium should be doing this and clearing it up, because they have a responsibility to do that at the moment until you know, the landscape works are handed over to Remus, or to when the roads are handed over to the council.
Can I interject there, Charlotte and Ian? And so, Mark, I'm one of your local councillors here, alongside Shirley and Nick are on the call as well. Part of our responsibility is to put pressure on the consortium via the council, as I spoke about earlier, to get this finished in a way that people can hand it over, and then the responsibility moves over. But some of the rubbish on For the Dockyard is actually builders' old rubbish as well. So we've pointed that out to the council officers. So they are making sure that they're going to pick this rubbish up. And almost once that, I think there's actually a chimney on For the Dockyard as well, which none of us have got chimneys. So where that came from, I don't know. But just rest assured that we are on the case with pushing this, because I think it's something that is clearly an issue. But the responsibility is to get this consortium to pass the project over as quickly as they can, but it needs to be in an order that's acceptable. Because, as Ian said, we were trying to ascertain how many trees this whole development is deficient of at the moment, and it's in the hundreds. You know, there needed to be, on some of our roads, there should be like 8 or 10 trees down there, and there's 1 or 2. You multiply that across the estate, and it soon builds up. This is significant lack of delivery on behalf of the consortium in this regard. So, Charlotte, and if you want to, I'm happy to take, so if people have got complaints like this as well, you can get our details off the Vale of Glamorgan website and get in touch, and I'm happy to pick those issues out.
Yeah, are you happy, Mark, that we copy correspondence to you as required?
I'd like it, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I just clarify that? That's really helpful, Mark. So if I have a list of concerns, or if people in my street have a list of concerns, we can email you, is that right?
Yes, yeah, I'll put my email address onto the chat in this now, and please do.
Yeah. Oh, that's great, thank you very much. And can I just understand then, so if I email you, am I emailing you as a councillor or a member of the Barry Waterfront Residents Association? What capacity are you acting?
So I'd be acting as a councillor. So I am a member of BWCRA, but I'd be acting as your councillor. Okay. And Nick's a councillor. Nick Hodges on the call, Shirley Hodges on the call, and Stefan William as well, who's on holiday at the moment. They're all councillors for this area. It's our job to pick up these issues on your behalf. Now, some of this is made difficult because of all the reasons Ian just said. But difficult doesn't mean it's not something that's worth fighting against as well. So we're happy to pick those things up. I'll put my email address into the chat now, and please do email me.
Yeah, because if we don't fight, we don't get. I think it's the principle of that. But if you could, you know, if you're emailing, you know, the council, if you could also copy us in to BWCRA, so that we can actually monitor it and help where we can.
Can I just ask, if we've got 3 councillors in BWCRA and they're on the call now, does that mean you live on the estate?
Sure. So Barrack Ward is a big ward. I live on the estate. I live on Rodford Cambo. Nick and Shirley live on Romley Road, and Stefan lives on the island. So we all live in the ward. We're just 3 councillors. Well, there's 4 of us because they're town councillors. Well, 4 councillors across the ward.
I'm just wondering if you live on the estate, that means you see the issues every day. What difference does emailing you make? Because you already know about the issues and nothing's being done.
well, things are being done, because I explained that we met with the officers to try and force these things through last week. The difficulty it's about who's responsible. Most of the issues that we're talking about, that Ian talked about, the responsibility is with the consortium. My view is that we need to put pressure via the council to get the consortium to finish their work off, because at the moment, the street cleansing, for example, is the responsibility of the developers, essentially via their agent Whitehead, and they're just not managing that portfolio properly. So I think there's a need for it to be pushed. So I'm happy. Any other issues that you've got, not only do I live here, I walk my dogs around here, I know the area particularly well, and I don't think there's, I'm happy to be proven wrong on issues that I've missed out, but please do email with ones just in case I have.
Will do, thank you.
Yeah, hello there, it's Jeremy Novis. We live actually quite close to Charlotte. Hi, Charlotte. Just wanted to make a comment that we moved in April 2021 in Hailty Drow as well, and it was always accepted that it was going to be a bit of a building site for a time, and we still absolutely thoroughly enjoy and love being here, but there is that sense of frustration with the time taken and the seeming inertia of the consortium. And as we look around, I'm looking at the moment over to the Mole, and there was talk about about the new leisure development taking place, which I believe is going to get ready into 2023. And there's talk about the marina. There seems to be a time lag building in here. Is there any, not just for issues which surround us, but also for the whole dock itself, a time frame, a time scale in place which we can look forward to?
It's timescale that's a difficult one for them to pin down, because I think this whole development should have been completed this year, I think.
Yeah.
And of course, you've got all the excuses of COVID. Funnily enough, whilst they said they couldn't sort of do all the landscaping because of COVID, it didn't stop them building houses. So again, it's a financial thing.
I can see Nick put his hand up at that point, and as one of the councillors, I'm assuming he wants to come in on the wider question about the dock.
Yeah, if I can just, the mole got mentioned, so I think it's apposite that I say something on this. If you're not aware, you must make yourself aware that there are plans to build on the mole. Just to put it in context, the mole is 6 acres. For those of you who know Barry, Victoria Park in Cadoxton is 6.5 acres. So it's that size, different shape, of course, and virtually surrounded by water, but that's the sort of scale and size we're talking about. There are plans coming in from ABP, the landowners who own the mole, to develop it. And some of these things you need to be aware of, and some of these things you need to be, I think, concerned about. In the election, Mark, Shirley, Stefan and myself tried to make the point that plans would be coming available, and also that we felt that you, as residents of the waterfront, have had enough development, and it's time for a bit of give back from ABP and the developers to you. The plans currently that are being talked about are, of these 6 acres, 2 acres would be housing, more housing. 1 acre approximately would be parking because of the dreaded car. Then you'd be talking about 2 acres at the end where the current water sports facility is. That would be development, which would leave a strip, not the whole length of the mole, not that wide, from the landward end to 2/3, 3/4 of the way up, not very wide, on the southern side of the mole, if you know what I mean. We think this is unacceptable, and once you've built on it, not only will your standard of life be, I think, not improved, but also a glorious opportunity for an alternative use of the mole will be lost forever. There's been plenty of talk about development not being finished, taking its time, being behind time. This would be future development. Stacey, I can't tell you the planning application link yet because it's not in. They're in consultation, but there will be stuff coming into the levelling up scheme, which is being quite largely debunked by everyone at the moment about how that's going to work. All I can say is this is a glorious opportunity, not only for the developers to show goodwill, but also to support the unopened businesses that you have in the waterfront there in phase 2 at the moment, the coffee shops, restaurants and that, which would be ideal for people to use who are visiting a nice park that could be built there instead. I think you should be aware of that. What the Vale are trying to currently say is that 95% of people who saw the consultation were in favour of these plans, but of course they never showed any plans. And they've been a bit coy about just how much development that would be. They are arguing, of course, that the housing is necessary to make the financials all work out. Well, we've heard that before. I just wanted to make that point. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your response. It does seem to be from the cynical perspective, though, that houses are being built because that's where the revenue is, and all the work still needs to be done is the tail end of the job, which is an expense to the consortium, not a benefit. Is that fair or is that harsh?
I think that's fair.
It's very fair. The ABP want to please their shareholders. They keep doing that by squeezing Barry as much as they can. So watch this space.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, can I just jump in there? Like, I agree with everything that's been said. Like, practically though, what can I do as a resident? Like, practically speaking, all these things, I appreciate that, you know, Mark's given his details. I definitely will be getting in touch with you, Mark. Thank you very much. But what practically can we do to affect some form of change? Because it's like we're waiting for people to tell us what they're going to do. Meanwhile, we're living in a situation which it's, you know, it's not great. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I think the planners can make the best change because they can actually impose financial sanctions, I think, on the consortium. And I think it's, or they could if they wished, and I think it's something that, you know, that might speed up the process to try and get them just to finish off what they're doing over here and get out, basically.
So how do we put pressure on the planners? Like, what does that practically look like?
Well, I think that's through Mark, I think, initially. I know the Vale of Glamorgan, when you actually go on the planning website, the amount of enforcement that's going on is horrendous. And I think it's probably down to resources more than anything else. But, you know, if Mark and the others could actually put pressure on the planners to try and get this resolved as quickly as possible. I mean, I look on the planning website, you know, every few days or whatever, on the enforcement pages, and there's no documentation appeared at all as to what they're actually doing.
I just want to make it, this is my number one priority, to push them to get this thing finished. This isn't easy, Charlotte. Well, everyone knows this. I think Ian more than anyone else. This isn't easy because you're dealing with effectively three massive companies. Who was the last contributor said, you know, they don't want to do this because this loses them money. This is the back end of the development. This isn't the stuff that makes them the big amount of money. So I think there is a need for us to put a significant amount of pressure, which I'm doing. I think BWCRA and the councillors and others, you know, we've got Senate members, MPs, we can all get together on this one and put pressure to get the developers to finish this thing off. It's they need to do it, but they need to finish it. The thing I think I'm realizing is that they need to give it over in a state that's appropriate, because what's happened, Remus are currently being offered thing that they say are finished and they aren't. You know, we've bought houses that should have had a tree at the end of the garden and they haven't got them, but you've completed your house. Now some people have, you know, got a driveway where the grass used to be, try and put in a tree back there. And the trees aren't just there for prettiness sake, they're there for the biodiversity and the other elements that should be party to the development as well. So there's a big amount of work needs to be done here, but for me, this is a key priority.
Yeah.
And please do, Charlotte, drop me a line and Ian will talk a bit more as well. I'm going to shut up now.
Mark, do we need to do something like start a petition or something? Would that help you? I just don't want you to receive, like, you know, I feel very strongly about this, but I can imagine you getting 30, 40, 50 emails from us all. It's not, you know, it's going to be overwhelming, isn't it? Would a petition help?
So I think Ian was about to say something as well, but if I just quickly respond, I think we know what needs to be done, and it's get the developer to work. So the only people who can put pressure, the developers, in my view, won't give a jot about a petition that we do. They're not interested in that. Where they're interested in is what happened last time round. And as Ian said, it's the fastest he's seen something go up was when they were told they couldn't sell any more houses at the back end of the development. I'm sure some people on this call, their house sale was held up because of that enforcement action. That's the fastest they've ever worked. It's either delivering against enforcement like that, or the genuine threat of that enforcement will get them to move. There are some issues, especially waterside gardens, where there's still legal issues that they need to sort out with ABP that they haven't done yet, which I find incredulous, that you have this big parcel of land that still have issues of legal rights over it and safety issues with them with regard to ABP. I'm meeting ABP, the safety officer, tomorrow on the estate to talk through concerns that have been raised elsewhere with this regard as well. But, you know, by all means, I would encourage people to write to me. I don't think a petition, we can do a petition, we can, you know, we can do lots of things, but the pocket is where they really care. And that's what we've got to try and put pressure onto the enforcement team. The next time the enforcement officer does his walk, we encourage him to walk the estate with us again. I'll let people know, and they're welcome to join. You know, we won't bombard the poor guy. He's on our side. He does want to help this thing to happen. But perhaps one of the things that I think Nick and I found useful of him being with us is that he saw things that he hadn't seen before, because we were on our feet looking at things. We weren't just doing it as a desktop exercise. The next time that happens, I'll let people know.
Mark, does the council planning department have the potential to withhold permission for the same developers' additional developments on the basis that the consortium or the individual developers have, if you don't finish playing ball on this development, you're not going to get the next one?
Can I pass that on to Nick? Because Nick's been on the planning committee for, well, since he was about 10, I think. So he's probably better to answer that one.
Yeah, 27 years, yeah. Tricky, because we are told planning, keep it simple, planning is the use of land. That's all it is, yeah? If someone pays their fee and puts in a planning application, we have to look at it on its merits. And whilst there is case law and planning law about what might be acceptable or where something might be acceptable, it would be very difficult, I suggest, to say, no, you can't build here because you ballsed up or you didn't do very well on this place. The pressure comes from us as a resident, or you as a residents committee, us as councillors, and yeah, publicity they don't like. They don't like bad publicity. To me, it always sounds counterproductive for the developers. You'd think that whilst they were still in the process of selling properties, that, you know, people come and look at the area. Do I want to live here? And if there's rubbish everywhere, or if things seem to be half finished, you think that that would be not a good advert for them. But people have bought and they've continued to buy because it's the base. It's a brilliant place to be. So it's a tricky one. What I would say is, and Charlotte asked earlier, she said, what can we do about various things? If you want that mole to be protected and used for your benefit and the benefit of the people of Barry rather than the developers again, if you want your site finished off, you need to make yourselves heard at planning applications and planning meetings. Now that's a pain in the backside because that's time out of your lives. But I tell you what, it's far easier for someone like me, who's an ordinary planning member with one vote, to actually do something and say it with authority when I've got 200 people watching it, when I've got letters gone in where it's not just me, like I'm sounding, it looks like I'm sounding off. I actually have got that support behind us, and that's something we'll try and do. There are other issues as well that we will have to knock on your doors about very shortly, and I won't burden them with you now, but other things are coming to a head as well off your site. If I can leave it there.
Yeah, it's trying to get through to the developers that we've all paid for this. Some of us 4 or 5 years ago for these open spaces, for the roads to be finished, and that hasn't been done. It's all been paid for, as far as I'm concerned. The consortium just aren't actually living up to what they promised the purchasers at the time. Now, you mentioned waterside gardens. Now, I know that on the Section 106 agreement, it's quite clear that the public open space areas must be completed and handed over prior to the sale of any property that overlooks that area. And we're going back, what, I don't know when, 4 Penryn or whatever it was, that must have been completed nearly 4 years ago. And it's still a mud bath out there. So I don't know what sanctions can be made.
They're in breach of contract. They're in breach. They're in breach on multiple times, and the enforcement team know they're in breach.
Yeah.
It's what to do about those breaches, which is the critical thing.
Yeah.
And you know, the pressure needs to be applied now. And I think the Residents Association, I would encourage those who aren't to join BWCRA. I think the stronger the voice BWCRA has, supports councillors to do their stuff as well. But I think it is an engagement that we don't let go.
I don't think it helps. I think there's been internal arguments, I think, between Persimmon, Taylor Wimpey and Barrett. Yeah. Because I think Barrett, predominantly, I think, have refused to give Remus details of properties to join Remus, if you know what I mean, because they don't consider that the open areas have been completed, and they don't want to be party to a breach of planning law. That's the impression I get. I might be totally wrong, but that's certainly the impression I've got.
Mark and Nick, would it be possible when you go around and do your rounds and talk about what you would like support with in terms of what you can do as councillors, do you think that you could encourage people to join BWCRA as well? Because as you see now, I think Darryl said, was it 90 members? And if you look at the size of the estate, there's obviously a lot more people here than are joining. And this has gone on now for quite a long time. We've never seemed to be able to get the majority of people on the estate to join. So I think BWCRA could probably, I'm not saying they're not trying. I mean, there's some of you might know I was on the BWCRA committee, and it's a very hard work, but it might be something that you could just mention when you're going around to help us.
Yeah. Just to add to that as well, if I may, we moved in April last year. We did join BWCRA, and it's only as a result of this call we've realised that our membership lapsed because we didn't receive any reminders and we'd forgotten all about it almost. So there needs to our minds, there seems to be more impetus and to develop more, for want of a better word, clout.
But we won't get that unless we have members.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And even when existing members who wanted to join didn't realise actually we'd lost that membership because we'd forgotten it expired.
I think that was just because of the changes in BWCRA.
Yes.
Sorry, Darryl, did you?
Can I just jump in? Yeah. So anyone who is currently a member of BWCRA and has been over the last kind of year, 18 months, nobody's membership has lapsed. Okay. We've taken the decision not to lose people, right? So you still get the communications from us that we've been doing. Kind of, you're still obviously open to kind of these calls and things like that. The reason you've not been chased is because of the difficulties that we've had in handover of the treasurer role. So the old treasurer left. We didn't have a treasurer to take over. We now have a treasurer who's taking over, but now getting him access to the bank account has been a bit difficult. So what we don't want to do is go out to everyone and say, come and renew your membership, and just not be able to reconcile that properly from a financial perspective. So we're not turning around to anyone and saying you're no longer members or anything like that. Everyone who was a member is still a member. And once we've got through that kind of issue that we've got with regards to the bank account, we will actively go out to people and say, look, your membership is expired. Please come forward. This is how you can renew it at the lesser price, and things like that. So don't worry from that perspective. But what I talked about earlier with regards to our membership, with regards to our communications, with regards to the lower fee, the lower membership cost and things, those are all things that we're trying to drive in order to get kind of increase that membership into the association. So we're hoping that that will pay some dividends.
Excuse me.
That brings us, so I know there are a number of questions within the chat. It will probably go on a lot longer if we answer every single one of those on this call, which I wasn't necessarily expecting to do. So what I would suggest is if I go through the chat, take away all the questions, I can liaise with kind of Nick or Mark, because I know there are a couple of questions in there around the council and how kind of planning works and things like that. I'll also liaise with Ian with regards to some of the questions that we got around, do we have updates for certain areas of the development? And then we'll look to come out and put a kind of a Q&A document out onto the BWCRA website, which shows all the questions that have been asked along with all the answers that have come in. Okay. The only other thing that we were going to talk about on this meeting, which was requested by someone, unfortunately they've not been able to make this meeting today, but it was about fishing on the dock. Okay, so some of you may be aware, a couple of months ago, Alan Cairns came out and said that there is kind of ABP have allowed there to be fishing on the dock. Some people have asked questions with regards to what BWCRA's position on this is. Officially, BWCRA doesn't have a position on fishing on the dock. At the end of the day, the kind of we are trying to be positionless, as it were. ABP have made the decision that they will allow fishing, and that's the decision that we are communicating to people. What we are making people aware of is some people have experienced difficulties. So I myself am on Healty Drawer as well at the top end. I know that I don't necessarily have many issues with fishing when they're up there, whereas I know people who live down on the other side of Healty Drawer, just further down, seem to have a lot. So what is happening? Mark has been engaged with a number of residents, specifically down this area, this side of kind of phase 2. If people are having issues with regards to fishing, then he is kind of stepping in and asking for them to kind of approach him and make him aware of the issues that they are having. I did receive a notification earlier on today from Alan Cairns' office that they are having an open public meeting next Wednesday with regards to fishing. So everyone on the waterfront should be receiving a letter to make them aware of that, with an invitation that if anyone is affected by fishing, that they can attend that meeting, which is next Wednesday at 5:30 at the Bridge Between Community Centre, which effectively is one of the community centres over by the kind of older part of the developments over by Morrison's. So that was for everyone, or for everyone's information on there. Stacey, I can see you've popped your hand up.
Hello, sorry, I couldn't mute. I didn't ask for it to be put in the agenda because it's only a recent issue that I've been dealing with. I've made the local councillors aware of the Transport for Wales land, which if I could discuss with some updates, because it will affect a certain number of residents, if that's possible. Yeah,
so I think this is to do with the Transport for Wales kind of site and
yes,
activity that's going on, isn't it?
There's a number of issues with them which I've been addressing with them over recent weeks, and I've had some updates today over their appalling handling of most things, which I've also had an update from Alan Cairns today about it. I'm not too sure if the local councillors have received any updates, but I'm happy to update with where I am with it at present.
Yeah, by all means, if you'd like to give an update.
Yeah, over the last probably 6 or 7 weeks, myself and others whose land backs onto what was the heritage line have encountered a number of engagements and issues with Transport for Wales. The first one being the fence issue, which Nick, Shirley, Steph and Mark are fully aware of. They supported us with that, and that issue was resolved very quickly and very amicably. Since that date, since they've been digging up God knows what at the rear of our properties, my house has been engulfed by a black dust. It's literally in every room, it's on every surface, it's on all of my garden, it's all of my windows. Knowing that the land at the rear of us has been industrial use land, I'm heavily concerned for what the health and safety implications are for this black dust, which is just in the air. I've seen these clouds of dust come over from their land. I've been in contact with Lowry Joyce at Transport for Wales, who engaged with me on my first email and then ignored me for 2 weeks, despite me chasing her. I only got an update from her because I pinned her down and phoned her. She then updated me to state that I should now make my complaints formal through customer relations, which I did. And I've made a complaint in relation to the handling she had of that, because she never advised me of that route in the first place. I've been passed from pillar to post with Transport for Wales, being told I'll have updates when I don't hear from them. I only get updates when I start ringing and pestering them. I have been in engagement with Alan Cairns and the councillors with an email updating several issues, in addition to the fact that Transport for Wales have sent us a lovely glossy letter since I made my complaint over the black dust, stating that there is work ongoing and there will only be the sounding of horns between the hours of 5:30 and 6:30 as the trains leave the stabling yard, etc., etc. The black dust continues to be an issue. I am now engaged with a lady called Paula Webb, who explains that the issues they have with Transport to Wales, that it's broken up into various fractions and they don't know who works where, basically, which I've indicated I appreciate, but that is not to be at the detriment of residents, or get some answers for some complaints. In relation to the horns, I've raised that again with her, stating that over recent weeks, neighbours have been woken up from as early as 3:50 a.m. by the sound of train horns and loud noises and tannoy announcements from over at their land, which she's going to take forward, because that is in complete opposites to what their glossy letter has stated will happen. There has also been some issues over their lighting from their site, which over recent weeks hasn't been an issue because of the light mornings. The light hasn't, become that obvious. With darker mornings coming, the lighting is much more obvious from their land. As it happens, the site manager who was dealing with the lighting, a guy who was contracted to work for Amy, knocked my door this afternoon. He's come around the rear of my property. He understands the problem and assures me that it is going to be resolved when he is back on site next Tuesday. Alan Cairns has emailed me today stating that he is aware of my issues. I've also posted on the community group my complaint reference and encouraging other people to report any complaint to Transport for Wales on the basis that if complaints aren't registered and recorded to them, they won't take any further action. I am still no clearer as to what this black dust is and what the health and safety implications are for us as residents from that in the air. And as long as they keep digging at the land behind us, that dust is still going to be a problem. So I am due to receive a next update from Paula Webb by Friday, whether that's positive or negative, and I will see what she comes up with. I've had to signpost her to a number of people that she may get some answers for within Transport for Wales. So I will see where she comes by Friday with any updates. But I'm just seeking any support and assurance from the local councillors on the behaviours of Transport for Wales, not positively engaging unless they're forced to engage, and the fact that they're conducting their business outside the rules that they have notified to residents. That's it.
Stacey, I can see Nick popped his hand up quite quickly.
Yeah.
Stacey, thanks for everything you've been doing on this.
Yeah.
Can I just start by saying what they are doing is unacceptable.
Yes.
Absolutely. We even though we don't live on the waterfront, we're Romney Road, we're sort of above and viewing the site. We hear those horns. We've had our windows open in the hot weather.
Yeah.
We see it, we hear it, we know what's going on, and it's unacceptable. This was literally bounced on us and you and everyone else
100%.
by the cabinet of the Vale Morgan agreeing to this happening. And supposedly they were blackmailed because Wales wouldn't get trains otherwise, and it's just bullshit, but there you go. The black dust, I suspect, is largely coal dust.
That's what I expected to be.
Yeah. Biggest coal exporting dock in the world. Bit of history there, obviously.
It
What I
don't take a
would say
scientist
is,
to work that out, does it?
yeah, there could be other stuff in there. It's a brownfield site, effectively, which has been redeveloped, and we understand that. We're not happy. We've been trying to get enforcement and various actions with the Vale Morgan Council. They've been sold a pup. It's up to the Vale now to regulate it properly.
Yes.
And that's where we'll go from it. And
Okay.
we're not happy with this. To be honest, whilst it has a history of being the rail interchange and God knows what, and has the tracks there, this sort of industry is not welcome and not acceptable in this area. And this could have happened in so many other places.
Yeah. Now, the guy who's in charge of the lighting for the site, I asked him because we had some common ground. So he was very open with me, very honest with me, as I was him, because of, connections that, we had through other means. I said to him that in this glossy letter from Transport for Wales, and as they've only announced to us previously, that this is going to be a temporary site whereby, it's only going to be until 2025. And they're now announcing in this glossy letter that they are considering to make this a more of a permanent option, which again, it's all a bit cloak and dagger because they've sold us a bit of a white elephant and now they're, they're pulling rabbits out of hats. According to him, he believes that the work that he's done is only a temporary fix, not a permanent fix, that this use of the land will only be up until around the time that they've initially stated, whilst Taftswell and Campden are brought up to speed. But it may well be that he's not fully informed, or their plans to move permanent, will develop in time. But it's definitely something we need to keep on top of with Transport for Wales, especially as this is massively political because TFW are government owned. So I just want to keep driving this and bothering them as much as possible. And I'm advertising to local residents that if they don't complain and put their complaints in writing via WhatsApp or email, which I posted on the community group, we will never achieve anything against Transport for Wales.
Thank you, Stacey.
Can I just add something, Darryl? So I'll be very brief. Just to let people know as well that if you remember the old coal trucks that were they were going to be disposed, they were going to be sold first, and now they've decided they couldn't sell them, so they're all being scrapped. So people may be aware that they're being scrapped one by one, just beyond Barry Island Station. So it doesn't necessarily affect people who are on this group particularly, but it's another issue that we are dealing with to understand, because that is a 7 in the morning, 7:30 in the morning through to 5 o'clock noise that you can't be in your garden with. It's that disruptive. So there are a number of fronts that we're talking to the TFW on at the moment in support of this.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Finally, then, I think we've got one more hand up. Apologies, I can see a gentleman, the name is Jess. So I'll call you Jess.
Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, he's still on mute.
There we are. Sorry about that. We've just turned it off, Jess. Unlock it. Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Right, lovely. I've lost your sound now. Sorry, I was late. I came home from work. I'm not sure whether we've gone over already the bollards in the shopping area and the bollards between Asda and Newport Neptune Road, regarding people just driving through and using them as a shortcut.
Yeah, so Mark, local councillor, did give an update on that earlier. He's been putting pressure to effectively get some kind of concrete blocks and things put within the bollards in order to try and stop that happening. So some concrete blocks have gone kind of on the back end of that development to try and stop it there. And I think he's been putting pressure to get them on the Asda section as well in order to effectively stop people being able to go through.
Amazing.
Ian,
yeah. Also, I've got a contact with an AB for the ports.
Okay.
Which is a Sean Sullivan.
Yeah.
If you want to write down his email, which is S Sullivan, so it's SULLIVAN at abports.co.uk. He's the person responsible for this dock. So he's actually having a meeting with the council this week.
He's meeting me tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's emailed me back and forth regards to some stuff. So he said if any residents have got any concerns, obviously the more people that email, the more clout it'll have. But he's great at getting back to you, and he does give you a genuine answer as well. But he's more than happy for people to email regarding any concerns on the whole of the dock thing. So with people in the water, litter in there. One of the other things we dealt with previously was the amount of rubbish that comes out of the back of Asda and blows straight into the dock packaging. So we got involved and dealt with Asda with that at one point. So he's a good contact to have. And also, yeah, you mentioned the meeting next week with Alan regarding the fishing. The more people there, the better. Because I know the people who live on Neptune Road, we have them in our front garden, smoking weed, drinking alcohol, being abusive to us when asked to move along at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I know it's the same for the people who are on the waterfront on for the dockyard. You know, it's just not acceptable, really. Even to the point of the one chap actually owns a fishing shop within Barry. So, you know, things need to get done, really.
That probably brings us to an end. As I said, I'm conscious that there are a number of questions that are on the comments. So I'll make sure that we get answers to those questions and distribute those out. But other than that, I'll say thank you all for joining and enjoy the rest of your evenings.
Thank you, Darryl.
Thank you.
Thank you.